Okay, so I am doing this little pre-recording with Tony so that everyone can watch in their own time. So I am putting the spotlight on you this week, Tony, and I'm really excited because quite aside from the fact that you're super powerful in your own right, I really loved what you spoke into on our food session. And, that you really practice what you preach. And that, is so impressive to me because it's often something that I know I find that, sometimes I have to pull myself up because I am not actually acting authentically in terms of of the words that come out. Like I get misaligned just like everybody else. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to chat with you about your journey um, and how you come to hold so carefully these frequencies of the food you eat and how you stick with it and yeah, and just get a little bit more information for anyone that's wanting to tiptoe around, some changes in their diet or the way they look at food or observe it in their body. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so, first of all, for me, it's about the love for the animals. I've always been an animal lover, and I've just, even though I have progressed from being a meat eater, as I grew up, I just found that it just really didn't resonate with me after a while. And then, just the smell of the cooking of the food would make me sick. If I'd have like eggs on toast, like I'd eat it and something just felt off for me. And I just knew that being vegan or vegetarian to begin with was the path that I wanted to take. And, for me, as I've said to you in the past, when I studied to be a yoga instructor, something changed within my body. And my body rejected the steak, the meat. I went on the progress of starting out being a pescatarian. And I thought, if Yeshua could eat fish, then so can I. And I was okay with that to begin with. And then I started thinking about the fish. And I'm just like, everything is a living thing. And I just didn't want to consume that into my body anymore. And there's so many, when we talk about veganism and my journey, I feel like there's so many things that I can touch on, and there's so many layers to it that it's hard to even put into, human words to how it makes me feel to be on this path of enlightenment, right? And, for anyone out there who is, thinking about maybe giving this a shot, then, I always start out with saying, why not try like a meatless Monday, right? Have
Mm.
your Mondays for, meat free. And then, see how that goes for you. And then gradually progress. Say maybe do a week, you know, with no meat, or just
Mm.
maybe white meat and just have fish, and see how that goes. Listen to the body and see how that actually responds to you and talks to you. Like you said in the last session, we were talking about how the body speaks to us, and see how that responds with the food as you're consuming it, and being conscious of what you're putting into the body, right?
Mm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, for me, 21-day manifestation, like we just recently did that in the group, and I could see there was a few people who jumped on that. And I know just by putting the intention, like intention is everything, right? If you intend to say, okay, for the next 21 days, I'm going to maybe cancel out a steak, right? Or the next 21 days, I'm going to just have the meatless Mondays and see how that goes for a consecutive 21 weeks, right?
Mm, mm,
And just use the intention to, reprogram the mind. We're so, we've been brought up in society where, a meat and two veg on a plate is considered normal, right?
mm,
And, for me, in my experience, it's being different of when you're at like an event and you're declining the cheese platter, right? People kind of look at you like thinking, oh, you're not going to have any cheese. And it's just like simple things like that. Um, Makes you realize, and if anything, for me, it's an opportunity to really just kind of expand other people's awareness to veganism, right?
mm,
It's
mm,
not always about stepping in front of the traffic or walking into a steak restaurant and say, with, blood all over yourself. Like for me, it's more of a spiritual awakening, and just looking at an animal as if they are us, right?
mm.
Um, there's people out there, who, we talk about cannibalism, right? People used to eat humans, right? And I understand we're animals as well, right? And I don't want to be the person to actually eat or consume that animal itself,
Mm.
not just for the respect of the animal, but for understanding the frequency they go through when just before they're getting killed, unfortunately. And when we look deeper into it, in like me being out west in the rural country, I'm forever seeing a bunch of cows on the way to the slaughterhouses. And it's without a doubt, I'm usually driving behind them or they drive past the house. And there's usually one or two cows that are literally locking eyes with me. And it's like they speak to me and I can see the tears in their eyes. And that's just a frequency in the lead up to them knowing what's going to happen and knowing, that they're being sacrificed for our enjoyment on a plate, right?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, that's such a good point. I grew up in Wellington and we used to, you had to go over these hills to get anywhere. And we were always traveling behind cattle trucks. And I used to just, it was just like this childhood habit. I would sort of go and stand inside the animal and imagine what what was going on within that animal as they were standing, in these crowded trucks, often more than one layer, off on their way to the slaughterhouses. And I often meet people who've worked in the slaughterhouses and then become vegetarian after seeing what goes on in there. And when I moved to London, I got into meditation, I got into Buddhism and yoga, and this was, 30 years ago. And I really wanted to become vegetarian. It became important to me to become vegetarian in my early 20s. And I remember, really wondering how I was going to do this because I didn't know what to eat anywhere. If we went to a restaurant, the only thing you could get was a baked potato with baked beans, right? And that was just becoming vegetarian, not even vegan. And so that was literally the only thing on any menu in London when I arrived. And what I did was, I thought, if I give everything up, I'm going to fail. So I gave up one meat a month over about 6 months. And the last meat I gave up was bacon, because I had this great love of bacon. And of course, since then I've done, a lot more research into pigs, and actually now that would probably, that would be the first thing I would give up now if I was doing that again. But very slowly, I allowed myself to continue eating, and just reduce, reduce, reduce. And then gradually I just didn't want it anymore and couldn't imagine eating it anymore. And then when I was pregnant, I started having these cravings, and we had students, and the students didn't want to be vegetarian. So I felt sort of obliged to come back to it. Of course, I'm not obliged to do anything. These are the stories we tell ourselves to justify our actions, and this is where I started getting malaligned again. Was even though I wasn't eating it regularly, I started introducing meat back in, and then it's gradually started having this deteriorating effect on me, because deep down I know that I don't really want it, right? And my body is asking me to stop, and to stop a lot more than just meat this time. So I really love the way you speak into that, and the 21-day manifestation, which maybe, after this, we might see if anyone is interested in doing one together, so that we can support each other through maybe even just some small changes that might help people digest, these new frequencies in a more deeply embedded way that is longer lasting.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, as we've done even like the 3-day water fast together, I
Mm,
find doing it as a collective movement, we're there to support each other and, just have that backup. If we fall back, that we can, voice our opinions and just get, the back and forth companionship as we evolve in that journey. And I find, just doing things together just makes things so much more powerful as well. We all set the
absolutely.
intention when we come together, and it just makes you feel like you've got more of a purpose as well,
Totally.
right?
Absolutely. And just had a little blip there. Uh yeah, so I remember, I don't know if you remember, but the girl from Clueless, I can't remember her name. But she started years ago the Kind Diet. And it was about her journey into veganism. And and I remember thinking, I remember being very interested, because at that time there wasn't a huge amount of people that I knew that were vegetarian, in fact, hardly any. But by the time I left London, there was whole, vegetarian restaurants, there was vegan places, and a lot of vegan substitutes and things coming out. And I remember, she was interviewed on Oprah. And Oprah said, well, I've got all these really happy chickens, and and they run around, and then, they just die suddenly and get eaten. Like, is that okay? And and I remember her saying, well, I'd like to meet these chickens and and see how they feel about, about this life. And I remember thinking, we really don't think much about the consciousness of animals. We really don't think, are these animals conscious? Do they have consciousness? And, the more we research, the more we find that, of course, they do. And anyone who has a pet would be hard pushed to say that there's no consciousness in that pet. Often there's an extraordinarily deep connection to the human realm, and deep love and compassion for the journey that they have come here to do. And so, if we look at things like dolphins bringing, turtles stuck in wire to fishermen, and then, bringing them a fish to thank them, and all this sort of thing, and the fact that, dolphins use pufferfish or whatever to get high, like, I mean, that is just an indication they are so like us on so many levels, isn't it? So in a way, you know, I guess like do we see it as another form of sort of cannibalism to be eating animals if they are holding a consciousness just like us and breeding them in these extraordinary ways that involve, enormous amounts of growth hormones and, growing them to the size of a 2-year-old in 6 months and, just to satisfy the incessant demand of the earth.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, just to piggyback off what you had spoke about in terms of them having a consciousness, when my sister Alana and we did an SMA meditation course with our well-respected martial arts instructor, Henshi Dina and I do, he taught us about the circle of life, right? And that there are 8 transitions in terms of his belief system that at one stage we evolve as an animal. So we start out, from source, God, creator, however you wish to call that. And then you evolve into a rock form, which also has a consciousness. And then you become vegetation. And then you become the insect. And then you become the animal. And then after that, then you evolve into a human. And then you become the superhuman. And then you become cosmic. And at each stage of that evolution in the transition, your consciousness changes. So, in terms of me not, or us not wanting to consume that animal, we're basically kind of eating ourselves, right? And part of our soul evolution. And it makes me question what that would do for, the karmic effect, right, of what we have to do in many, many years to come. Is there a karmic reaction to us consuming the animals? And it's a question, that, could raise a lot of answers, right? Um, but many, many years ago, I have to tell you a story. I was at a nightclub and I got high off acid, right? I thought it was like an ecstasy tablet. It turns out it was an acid drop, right? And it was the first and last time I will ever take acid, mind you. I was high for coming up to 3 days, and I was at a state of mind that I genuinely thought I wasn't going to come out of this trip. And I understand that there's many people who have taken that and they've ended up in mental institutions and just some horrific stories. And I was pretty much acceptance. Okay, I'm not coming out of this. This is my reality now. And I had to go home because I was living with the parents at the time, and my parents freaked out. So my mum was on the phone to the hospital, speaking to the nurses, thinking of, is there something that they can do to counteract that? And in the time that she was on the phone, I had my stepdad, Terry, go down to the shop with this great idea to bring back this meat pie for me, right? Thinking, that would kind of sober me up and get me out of this trip. And I remember biting into this meat pie because I was a meat eater at the time. And the pie started talking to me. And I was seeing exactly process by process of how that cow got mutilated, the feeling that it went through, and just the whole process, just in like a blink of an eye, of how it got into, consumed into this meat pie. And little did I know that that was going to be the start of my awakening. And I think that was just maybe an awakening of a dormant, DNA within my consciousness that needed to be had. And I guess I'm grateful for going on this, so-called trip to actually still remember that. And I just, looking back on it, was just such a profound moment
Mm.
of, oh my God, like we're eating a soul here. We're eating a consciousness that was able to connect with me being in that, state of mind. Mind you, like it was probably the closest to God, source creator that I've ever been because, like I said, I didn't think I was going to come out of it. But that was just enough within itself to realize that we need to be more aware of this conscious eating, right? Especially now, right? There's so many genetically modified foods. They're making meat in a lab now, plant-based, meaning in the plant. And you just don't know what they're putting in it. And this is why I go back to my belief is if it grows in the ground, eat it. If it doesn't, don't eat it. And the less you can eat a product that is not consumed and processed, try your best to have organic, join up with some local farmers markets, buy direct from the farmers themselves and try and keep it as organic. And the less hands that touch it, the better, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah. Actually, when I came back to New Zealand for my last trip last week, and I was working just all day, every day, for about 8 or 9 hours. And I arrived on the Friday night, and on the Sundays, Nesta and I went to the farmers market, and we just stocked up on veggies and fruit. And so we just got two big bags. And so throughout the day, I just, if I wanted, I ate very, very lightly, if at all, during the day. Because when I'm working to that level, I'm in the zone, and I don't want to get knocked out of the zone. So I would just have some blueberries and cherries or an apricot. And then at the end of the day, we would cook up a big thing of steamed veggies or roasted veggies and have that. And then, yeah, towards the end of the week, we had a bit of meat, and it didn't feel good, right? Nothing felt good. Wanted to go back to the steamed veggies. And so I'm in the same boat as a lot of people here, where, I went in with the body talk and I had a chat to my liver, which has been extremely elevated. And I know that this is a very common thing in menopause, where I have discovered that now. But at the time, I was thinking, how on earth did my liver levels get so elevated, right? I'm not a heavy drinker anymore. I'm not, it's very like, I don't have a lot of heavy foods. So I was really wondering myself, how this happened. And I went in and I had a chat with my liver, and my liver was so bloated, and it just felt so alone and lonely, and it was sitting there really just saying to me, you you're just lumping everything on me. You expect me to deal with all of the food you put in that your body doesn't want. You expect me to deal with all of your emotions. Anything toxic that comes into your body, I'm just expected to process it and deal with it and not complain. And I just was so shocked. And I realized that my liver is talking to me loud and clear, right? It's had enough of me just dumping all my toxicity on it. And that can be anything. That can be a thought process of food, environmental toxins. It can be so many different things. But I am ready to support my liver back to full health. And so I'm going to just suggest that if anyone wants to do this 21-day manifestation around food with me, that I'll we'll start a little either group, or we'll get that going within the Facebook page and just support each other, and see if we can all come into a little bit more alignment with what our consciousness is asking us to do. And this is no judgment, and this is no, not pushing any views on anyone, because I'm in the same boat as everyone. And I just love talking to you because you are, there in terms of really holding what frequency of food completely matches your consciousness. And that's where I want to be. So, for me, this is just an invitation to anyone that's interested. And if so, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and yeah, I'm with everybody 100%. I am there. I'll be doing it with you. I'm sure there's another habit on my list somewhere that I can retract from my daily, daily doings, so to speak. But just being sober in general, and even if you want to look at, eliminating alcohol to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. Start with the liquid and then go into the more processed foods, and then get into the meats, and then possibly the fish after that. So myself, I'm coming up to nearly 3 years sober now, and the 21 manifestation was something that, I started with that. And once again, something just kind of awakened within me. I came to this realization that it was just not a frequency I wanted to consume anymore. And in my belief and my experience, every time that I would drink alcohol, I would be demonically attacked that night.
I've
And
had that too.
yeah, so I just realized, I put the link together. I'm like, okay, so there's a reason why they call that spirits, right? And what that does is it allows an opening, like, okay, you can come into my vessel and you can take over and you can do what you want.
Mm,
And that allows these entities to come within your energetic body, into the stream, and play havoc with all sorts,
100%.
especially in dream time. So
Yes.
I just, as soon as I eliminated that, it just, I mean, like, I've still got the attacks every now and then, but that is just gone completely
Yeah.
almost. And when we look at alcohol, if you like to drink wine, a red wine or a white wine drinker, in terms of the veganism side of things, most of that is filtered through fish scales. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. It's true.
So, and then the
And in
sugar
France,
content.
it's pigs intestines, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. There's so many. The more you research and look into the many rabbit holes of veganism,
Yeah.
the darker it can get as well. There's so many things I would love to deep dive into that, and I don't know if the world's fully ready for all of the things that I know. Like, if you knew half the stuff I knew, you'd be mortified.
Yeah. I
So,
believe that. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like we can do a part two and a part three of this actually, because
yeah.
there is, I know that in my 20s, I started deep diving into a lot of stuff, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it really did put me onto a whole other path. And yeah, I'm in full agreement about alcohol as well. Every time I check in around alcohol, I see it as worse than cocaine, almost one of the worst drugs, that's out there, and more harmful in so many ways. Yeah,
And legal as well,
and legal.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh. Oh, I've got like all this does is just brings up like a thousand more things that we could talk about, but I think we'll leave it there and let's just see how everyone digests that, and I feel like I might even share this a little more widely than just our group, and see what sort of response we get, because I just find this area so fascinating, and I think so many people are wanting to at least explore, like you said, several days a week where they are vegan, or at least explore, how their body feels when they reduce down alcohol and meat, and I feel that we can help support people on this journey into reducing and discovering a little bit more about themselves and how they feel when they do that, and encourage people along, including myself. And I'm very, very excited and look forward to our next steps together.
Amazing. Thank you so much today and having the opportunity to, speak about my life and what I'm so passionate about.
Thank you, Tony. And this is Tonie Godsell, and we are going to be doing a lot more in this area. Thanks, darling. Mwah.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. And we'll see how we go with this and be back soon. Mwah.